Former Mississippi State men's basketball player Shane Power now on the Farm Bureau phone line. Farm Bureau, go with the home team. Shane, so you were recruited by Ben Howland when he was the head coach at Pitt. Is that right?
Matt and Richard, that is. Good to join you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Took my official visit to Pitt. And, you know, guys, I headed to Starkville instead, and I'm sure, you know, he was probably puzzled at the time knowing they had just come off, I think, an Elite Eight trip, and had most of the guys returning, but, you know, definitely felt at home at Starkville. But on that trip, you know, I really learned a lot about Coach Howland. You know, one, I think he's a very, very intelligent guy. Listen, you don't mastermind 3 programs like in Northern Arizona, Pittsburgh, UCLA, without being, you know, a very intelligent person. Number 2, he's very charismatic. You know, he's a guy that's not afraid, you know, to get in there with families and recruits, and, you know, he's a very charismatic guy, very energetic, you know, which I think will play well, obviously, you know, recruiting-wise. And, you know, talking about recruiting, he is a guy with national connections, you know, on the recruiting side. And guys, remember, you know, I talked about it earlier today. You know, before these head coaches were, you know, everyone say, oh, you know, they're CEO of the basketball program. Well, now they're like presidents of Fortune 100 companies when you're making $2 million a year. And in order to warrant that type of investment, you've got to come in, and you really have to have the power and the networks to get things done immediately. Okay, if someone's going to pay you $2 million, this is not a 3 or 4 year ramp-up process for somebody like Coach Howland. This is going to be come in, reach out to those Adidas, you know, networks, reach out to those Adidas contacts, bring in, you know, top 50 and top 100 players from day one, and do that year after year. And I think he'll do that after being around him, you know, on my official visit. One thing I know, guys, he'll hire a really good staff. At the time there, you know, Jamie Dixon was his right-hand guy, and I spent a lot of time with Coach Dixon and have the utmost respect for him as well. That was a powerhouse staff at Pittsburgh. It really was. So I know Coach Howland, you know, having 2 years to think about who he's going to want on his staff, you know, I know he's going to hire a powerhouse staff at Mississippi State as well.
Shane, so the only thing that doesn't add up, I'm just picking on you, but if he's such a great recruiter, why didn't it work on you?
Stark Vegas, baby. That's enough said right there.
Richard rolled his eyes just then.
Well, I was just thinking about the exotic locales that Shane had to choose from during his basketball career, like Ames, Iowa, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Starkville. Maybe Starkville does come out ahead in those 3. Hey, Shane, so you went through the recruiting process a couple of times. Out of high school, you end up going to Iowa State, and then you go through the process again when you decide to transfer. How big a role, and you mentioned Adidas connections, AAU, how big a deal was that for you in the recruiting process?
Well, it's big because it's who you're like automatically connected with, right? So I went to Adidas camp, you know, made the Adidas All-American team there. Because of that, you're around a certain group of coaches. You know, because of that, you're more visible, you're more accessible to a certain group of coaches. You know, and it wasn't like I just picked it, you know, Adidas. It was, you know, Adidas and Nike invite who they want to their camps, and you know, Adidas reached out a year before Nike, and that's just kind of how it wound up going. So, you know, the shoe companies definitely are going to pick the players they want in their camps, and they're definitely going to give a lot of access, especially to their top, you know, to their top 5 or 10 Adidas coaches. And it's going to be the same with Nike too, as you see with Coach Calipari and Coach K, and those guys are just going to get more access to those players, especially at those camps and a lot of those events. So it's just kind of once they reach out and pick you for that camp, it kind of all, you know, naturally happens from that point. And obviously with Mississippi State being a flagship Adidas school, you know, I think there was a lot of synergies there, and it probably just made sense.
Shane, do you feel like, I know you follow college basketball closely. You and I worked together on television for a couple of years and had a good time with that. being out west, do you feel like you've got a good understanding of why UCLA fired Ben Howland when they did, considering the amount of success that he had had?
Yeah, I really think it comes down to, in a program like that, you almost set the bar so high, not only from the tradition, but also going to 3 Final Fours. I mean, guys, let's be honest, at any of the Mississippi schools, they're building a statue of you if you go to 3 Final Fours. I mean, there would be a Matt White statue in Stark Vegas that, it's just a different place. I'll tell you, Richard, there's some big time, UNLV alumni that live in our neighborhood, and they were actually trying to buy out the UNLV coach to get Ben Howland in there this year. I mean, this is happening the last month, 6 weeks. So I know they thought an awful lot of him. I know the high school and AAU coaches in the Chicagoland area where I grew up, they really thought he was coming there to DePaul. Everybody was excited about that. They felt like he was the guy that could turn DePaul around. So, from that standpoint, there's 2 pretty good basketball schools there that were doing everything they could to get Coach Howland. And, part of it is timing and fortune. And it really is. You can be as strategic as you want. But, guys, let's be honest. If Mark Turgeon doesn't win and go to the tournament this year, and it came down to the very end, if he doesn't go to the tournament, you got to ask yourself, would Coach Howland, would that position be open? Would Coach Howland, have considered Maryland? There's a couple other jobs like that. I mean, there's talk of Mike Anderson maybe getting let go if he didn't do well at Arkansas. And there's spots like that around the country. The interesting part to me is really the 2 best jobs in the market right now, we're Alabama and Mississippi State. And from what I'm hearing, Alabama has even more money that they're going to throw at their basketball program. The Mississippi State, and quite frankly, more than, every other school in the country, minus maybe 5 schools. So it is interesting that there wasn't a whole lot of high-profile candidates this offseason, and there wasn't a whole lot of high-profile jobs. I think that timing really played in Mississippi State's favor.
Shane Power on your radio, Super Talk Mississippi, and on supertalk.fm. If you're just tuning in, interesting stuff, and we'll tell you how you can hear that again if you missed our conversation with Shane on the archives. We'll tell you where that is coming up. Shane, we're out of time, unfortunately, but really good stuff. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I'm glad we're catching up with you, albeit too late this year. We should have called you earlier. So thanks again. We'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Thanks, gentlemen.